is synchronous. That means it may not just be one guy showing up saying, hey, you need to come here. Again, think of Star Wars. The robots show up and Princess Leia pops up in a little hologram that says, Obi-Wan, I need your help. You must rescue me. She looks up to the right and vanishes. Right? And then does that over and over. That's not enough to get Luke Skywalker to go find Obi-Wan. He talks to his uncle. Oh yeah, he's the crazy guy off in the desert. That's not enough to get Luke to run off into the desert. Finally, R2, one of the heralds, goes, I need to find this Obi-Wan guy, and short circuits or whatever, or he gets his little restrainer bolt taken off, and then takes off into the desert, and Luke discovers this and goes, oh, I'm going to be up shit creek if I don't, come back and get this expensive robot and bring him back to the water or the moisture farm. So he runs off. All these things are piling up on Luke until basically his aunt and uncle are killed by the stormtroopers. And that's the big rock sitting on top of this big pile where Luke goes, okay, let's go have an adventure. It was all synchronous. So you need stuff like that in your story. One big excuse usually isn't enough, or it becomes too obvious. That's the big excuse. So pile lots of little things on your character to get them to your hero, to get them to run off and do their thing.
Pile of tension.
Yeah. And each little rock you add to that synchronous pile of reasons ups the tension.
Huh.
Yeah. The call is usually tempting. There's usually a good thing at the end. Whether that be gold, love, ambition, power, adventure, just adventure for the sake of adventure. Or it could be to somehow better or improve the ordinary world. The ordinary world is at threat. When Gandalf, who is a herald and a mentor and a trickster, when Gandalf shows up, at least in Lord of the Rings, and tells Frodo, you need to take this ring and go huck it into the Mount Doom, let's go. That's really not enough. The Frodo needs more of a reason, and finally he learns that the ordinary world's at threat by forces of Sauron, and through a couple of other things, that's enough to get Frodo to go, okay, let's go, and off they go. So the allure is not necessarily enough to get the hero out the door and on the road. The heralds change, so there's different types of heralds, and in this case, like Lord of the Rings, it's the mentor, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the herald, all Gandalf rolled into one, right? Showing up and dumping this huge problem on Frodo. And finally, the shadow starts to show up a little bit, and that's what gets Frodo out the door and on the road. And Sword of Shannara, that Alanon shows up, does the same role as Gandalf, because Terry Brooks totally emulated Tolkien when he wrote Sword of Shannara. And Floyd and Shay weren't going to get out the door and on the road until one of the shadow creatures showed up, sort of threatening their hometown. And they were like, oh, okay, well, they're hunting us, so we got to get out of here to protect our dad, and so on and so forth. So that got them on the road. So the call to adventure can be both, come here and go, or both. Let's see here. Leaving the ordinary world to answer this call to adventure will leave the hero confused or disoriented or without grounding. They're used to being in Kansas. They're used to being black and white. And then all of a sudden they're in Oz, where everything's color, and there's all of these, not Oompas, the midgets running around, and munchkins running around, and lions walking on 2 feet, and so on and so forth. It just, Dorothy was just like, what the hell is going on here? I guess I'm not in Kansas anymore. It's a great classic line there. The call to adventure could fill some need in the hero's life. I really don't have any examples for that guy, but if they're lacking in something vital, the call to adventure could promise to fulfill that.
No, there's Luke Skywalker.
He's bored. He wants to do something. He
Sure.
wants to get off the
Sure, he's
planet.
doing it for
He wants
adventure's
to do something else, something, anything.
Right.
Then the call to adventure, once it finally kicks him in the ass enough to get him started, then it's that promise of there's more out there.
Sure. Sure.
So,
That's
Who
great.
in their right mind would go and do all that on purpose?
Yeah.
the hero.
Make all
The
those
willing
sacrifices.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, the willing hero. Right.
Also, the hero may not have an option. They may be clubbed over the head, shanghaied, drugged off to some exotic location, and they've got to fight their way back to the ordinary world. They may not have.
The Odyssey.
Yeah. Yeah. They may not be given the option. And again, I stole the title out of the segment, Call Waiting. That's how I phrased it in the book. And it may be multiple calls hitting at the same time. You've got to go do this, and this, and this, and that, and you've got to pick one and go. This often happens to Harry Dresden. Does he get them all resolved at the end of the book? Most of them. All of them? No, because Jim Butcher, the author, has the luxury of a 18-book contract or whatever he's got sitting on his desk, and so he can string things out.
I don't think
and
his
all that.
contract has a sunset date.
I don't think so either.
I think
so
he's
either.
got a however many you want to write contract.
Yeah, yeah.
We have first view of anything that you write. Just send it this way. We'll
Yeah.
publish it.
And the calls can be what's called synchronous, meaning they can be done in parallel or at the same time, or they have a common theme involved, or they can be dichotomous, which means I have a goal to go here and there, and they're halfway around the world, or a quarter of the way around the world, each direction, what do I do? And that's really high-tension stuff there. So if you can pull that off and do it well, more power to you.
Batman's got to figure out if he's going to save what's-her-face or the other guy and
Or catch the bad guy, or
catch the
whatever.
bad guy
Yeah.
or save the girl kind of thing.
Right.
So
Or
Yep.
Superman's got to figure out if he's going to save Lois Lane that's just been thrown off a building again,
Yes.
or go find the bad guy that threw her off the building.
Exactly. Yeah. So, any questions over the call? Over on the call to adventure. So, next section is refusing the call. It's a pretty short section because it doesn't last very long in the book. If your character refuses the call, your hero refuses the call, and it's absolute, you have a very short, boring book. So this is a temporary state due to fear, daunting circumstances. They just don't know what to do next. That kind of thing. The hero can try to avoid the call, make excuses, but persistent refusal leads to some sort of tragedy that then gets them on the road to the adventure. In this case, had Luke taken the droids with Obi-Wan and gone straight to the city, the hive of scum and villainy. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh, Mos Eisley.
Yes, Mos Eisley. Thank you. Had they
Sorry,
done that,
I'm sorry I know that.
the Aunt and Uncle might still be alive today because the stormtroopers tracked the droids back to the Aunt and Uncle.
Right.
But in this case, the tragedy of the aunt and uncle being killed by the stormtroopers was required for Luke to stop refusing the call to adventure. And again, the whole call waiting thing, multiple calls to adventure can put one on hold while another one's accomplished. The willing heroes, if you have an absolute willing hero and they know they're going to do this, the refusal of the call may last just long enough for them to pack their bags, get out the door, and get on the road. So this is not a necessary element of... actually, none of these are necessary elements. They're just a good framework to follow. So refusal of the call can be very, very, very brief. Once on the road to adventure, the hero will most likely meet a threshold guardian, and this is the first test to see if the hero is worthy. And we'll get to crossing the first threshold here in just a bit. So any questions over the refusal?
Has anybody ever read any of the Green Rider series? I can't remember the author, but it's a fantasy set that has this is very prominent in my mind when the first book, the main character is basically a Green Rider dies in front of her, gives her his horse and his mission, and basically, here it is, do this.
Okay.
Then the whole book is her finally getting back to getting this mission done. And then she goes back home because she's supposed to be a Green Rider. She goes back home and refuses to be a Green Rider.
Okay.
And then the way the author got the main character kicked in the ass was basically the main character, girl's asleep. She calls the Green Rider horn, which is a big artifact in the Green Rider lore. The girl jumps up out of bed, jumps on the horse, hauls ass down the road, and she actually wakes up 5 miles down the road wearing nothing but her night dress.
Nice.
She's like, okay.
Right. So, meeting with the mentor. This is where the hero gains the supplies, knowledge, confidence, yada, 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 whatever they need to overcome the refusal of the call. So there's a little overlap between these two phases. It's not like they refuse the call, and then they accept the call, and then they meet the mentor. It's not like a step-by-step process, So there's a little overlap between these two. The mentor allows the hero to accept the call of adventure and move on. The mentor can be lots of different things. We've already talked about him extensively, so refer back to the first handout for the mentor stuff. This particular scene builds an emotional link between the hero and the mentor. When they first meet, why are they going to hang out together? Why are they going to stick together through thick and thin? Watch for various cliches. Wise women, elderly men, or in pointed hats, fairy godmothers, things like that. There's probably a million cliche-style mentors out there.
But they work so well.
They do. That's why they're cliches. So turn things inside out. Be a little different. Instead of, like in this case, in Batman's case, the butler is a mentor. So just give it a little twist. That's how you turn a cliche on its ear. If you end up using a cliche like a phrase or a person or a thing or whatever, find a way to warp it and twist it. Put it in front of the funhouse mirror that makes it look fat or skinny or whatever, or tall or whatever, and see how you can change it up and make it your own. That's how you fix cliches. So a mentor can misdirect the hero, just like Obi-Wan misdirected Luke about his father. The mentor can even betray the hero. They can end up butting heads and betraying each other. Vice versa is true. The hero can betray the mentor. They don't have to be buddy-buddy throughout the entire story. They typically are, but they don't have to be. And then mentors usually make brief appearances, go away, reappear, go away, reappear, that kind of thing. If you want a mentor to be side by side with the hero the whole way, then you're talking more of an ally than a mentor. But the mentor can take on the role of an ally as well. See how it can be mixed and matched and picked and chosen. None of this is hard and fast rules. So any questions about meeting the mentor? This scene where the two get together and form a bond, and the mentor helps out the hero overcome their fear of the call to adventure, so then they can get on the road and move on. Any questions over that? Nope. Okay, cool. So once they get on the road, they end up crossing the first threshold. So the call is heard, doubts and fears are allayed, all preparations are made, and the hero commits to the action, even if they're unwilling, because then they're being led to that commitment. But they commit to the action. This is typically the turning point into Act 2. There can be lots of reasons for committing, other than, it can be just it's time. Maybe the shadow does something to spur on the hero. It can be an external event or an internal calling. Often it's a combination of all of the above. So, the first threshold, what's the first threshold in Star Wars?